welcome to the Aligned Operator podcast by Bellaconnections. Today, I am so excited to introduce you guys to Shmuel here. He is the CMO of Built to Scale, where he helps high growth brands scale through performance marketing, creative strategy, and customer acquisition. He's got over 20 years of experience in digital marketing, especially in the DR space, and he's worked with companies ranging from startups to established brands, translating customer psychology and data into measurable business growth. Well, here is also the host of the Built to Scale podcast, which I was really excited to get to be a part of recently. He interviews entrepreneurs, marketers, and industry leaders about what it really takes to scale. So thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm so excited to go deep on all things paid media, creative, funnel, email, and more with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for those kind words. Very, very nice.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I really loved getting to connect with you previously and talk about all the kind of things around hiring, and now I get to, flip the script on you and get in on the performance marketing side of this. This is fun. It's exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. All right. So tell me, I know you've got over 20 years experience in this space. Can you tell me about like how you got started and, how you went from over here to where you are now with Built to Scale?
Yeah, for sure. So at my point in my career, I think 20 years, and I'm like, that's not a lot of time, but in reality, it is. So it's kind of hard to like kind of figure out how to get from point A to point B, let alone over a 20-year period. So I always say, yeah, it's all about opening doors. Taking opportunities, seeing where they go to, and that's really been the story of my career. So I started out in the online gaming space, doing like a lot of copywriting, PR type of work, email marketing, and slowly but surely I started, opening up more doors, getting, more skills under my belt. And, around 8 years ago, I started my own consultancy business. 2 years ago, I came over to be built to scale. Yeah.
Awesome. That's awesome. It's really is like a journey of collecting all the skills you need for this new CMO position that you're taking on. And really, I mean, you've been doing this for a while. You've been, advising and consulting for clients for a long time as well, and working a lot with paid media in a lot of different areas of a company and the marketing department. Do you have like an area that you love to work in the most, or what would you say?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It's hard to pinpoint one particular spot, but I definitely love the creative side of things. I just feel like I have that creative flair, whether it's coming with advertising, like a paid media ad, an email copy, funnel landing page, all that kind of stuff. So really just that kind of like the whole creative process, if you had to sum it up. But then again, there's so many different facets within that world of, just having, let's say take a landing page, for example, right? So there's so many different components to it, right? Different sections and colors and fonts and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot to it, but in one word, I would say creative, or maybe two words, the creative process.
Yeah, and there is so much into it. It's the psychology. It's just these micro things that are creating the actual conversion that we're not always completely conscious about. So I mean, that being said, what are some things that you're finding, especially lately, that are helping increase conversions? Because I know we're kind of in a hard time right now for a lot of companies. Have you seen anything
Yeah.
specifically that's working?
Yeah, so definitely creative testing and getting as many ads out as possible. That what we call creative velocity is going to be super, super important. I've been in rooms with really smart people and very creative people, and we've brainstormed and we came up with some ideas, and we thought they were going to be the best ideas, right? And if we were betting, we would say, this is the best one, this is second, third, fourth, and fifth, and so on and so forth. But then, digital marketing is a funny space. Sometimes what you think is going to work just flops, and what you thought didn't work is going to be, take take the lion's share and become your control. So I always say it's super, super important to really just be creative and be open to that creative process and testing more and more things. That's really, I think, the key, especially in today's world, where you said like a lot of people are having issues with the creative and their click through rates and conversion rates.
Absolutely. And testing as much as possible to see like what is actually going to work, especially in the new landscape of things. Have you found, like, I hear a lot of people ask, like, saying specifically like ads to VSLs or stuff like that aren't working as well anymore. Have you found that true for your clients and your work?
So a wise person once told me every good answer really needs to start with it depends, right? You know, my gut feeling is that VSLs are on their way out, but people are still using them and people are getting a lot of conversions with them. So it really depends, going back to that word, on what you're selling and the funnel where you're at. You know, it depends like what type of ad. You know, we could talk about Google, we could talk about Meta, right? There's the push and the pull where people are actively searching for you on Google, but on Meta you're just coming up with their feed. So that whole psychology plays into the whole process and the whole funnel.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, like, if they're actively searching, like, when you're doing Google Ads, for example, like, are you primarily looking at people, or are you targeting people in a way that's actively attracting and pulling them in? Whereas Meta, you're doing a little bit more push. What would you say the kind of ratio is on those?
Yeah, definitely when it comes to Google and Google search in particular, there's definitely that, active intent from the end user. But we're seeing excellent results at Built to Scale with demand gen campaigns. We've scaled some accounts to, like over $10,000 a day. So we're seeing some excellent results, and it's really not me. It's really the team. Built to scale. The CEO is Jeremy Gillespie. He's done a lot of amazing things in the DR space. We have a team of excellent media buyers, creative, account management, and stuff like that. So I can't take all the credit for it, but I do know that we've really scaled, people very very quickly from out of the gate, spending less than $1,000 to over $10,000 in a day.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Are you guys over there? Are you focused on Meta and Google, or do you have, like, do you kind of do everything, or what's your kind of specialties at Built to Scale?
Yeah, so we're really branching out. Like, you said, in terms of the changing landscape of things, what we were doing a year ago is not what we're doing today. We're trying to grow as well. We're on channels like Meta, Google, Native. We're getting into AppLovin. We're exploring some other channels as well. And in terms of the actual verticals, a lot of us have, myself included, have experience in the past with health and wellness brands. So we're very strong in that area. But not only that, like we have some biz ops, we have some small business loans and stuff like that. Clients in those spaces as well, where we're doing some lead generation for them. So yes, I think really, like, once you get behind the customer psychology and you figure it out, because that's how an agency is built. Like, we're built to, like, really be kind of like looking from that bird's eye view, where we see the landscape and we could see what's moving from all different verticals. But to go back to your question, yeah, I would say just the main media channels, and primarily in the health and wellness space.
Awesome. Okay. And I think, do you guys do a little bit of email too, or is that something I think you have a little bit
Not
more
so
of?
much. I've done email in the past. That's really where I cut my teeth in the digital marketing space. Like I said, I came up when I was doing copy and email, so I haven't really done a lot of email, with Built to Scale as of late. But it is something that we're exploring. Definitely, because Built to Scale is really more focused on the acquisition side, but with email marketing, it's more of a lifetime and retention marketing strategy. So I would say, like, in terms of expanding what we're doing right now, we're focused more expanding on different verticals and media channels as well. And then, who knows, maybe down the road we will get into email, which I know can be very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, as you've obviously cut your teeth on it before, you're well aware, but it also, like we've talked about before, in previous conversations, is you also need that specialist for each area, and it's really helpful to have an agency that specializes in the acquisition for direct response in the health space, specifically. So I know actually a few colleagues were recently mentioning how they've had a really hard time getting their ads, like pay management, for example, onto Google, because of all of the compliance and everything that goes with that. Do you find, like, what are some things that you find clients are, like, really missing the mark on when they're trying to get something on Google, or just a common theme that you're seeing that they're not able to launch Google ads because they keep trying to do it this one way?
Yeah. So So Ryan Dice, he always talks about, I think he was the first person who spoke about this, that like when you're advertising, it's akin to dating, right? You wouldn't ask someone on the first date to marry you, right? So you have to kind of like ease into it. So what we're seeing in terms of like some of the clients and potential clients that come to us is that when we look at their landing page, it's super, super aggressive. And, it's kind of like that asking marriage proposal on the first date, which most of the time I would say 99% of the time is not going to work, right? So it's about thinking about like that from a compliance perspective as well, not just the psychology perspective of, will someone convert on this landing page? It's also about, wait a second, is it compliant, right? Am I saying things that are over the top? So it's about that, and then what do you do with that at that point, right? So there are two things that we always recommend and advise our clients in doing. One is scaling it back, right? Take it down a notch, right? And then the second thing is putting up an interstitial page as well. So where that means basically you put a bridge page in between the ad and the landing page. And the bridge page is kind of more of a neutral type of, I guess, extension of the ad. And by doing that, you're kind of like pre-qualifying your audience. So it is another click, and there are pros and cons of both. And like I say, we could always split test these things.
Yeah. And it's always good to split test, but I like hearing that there's different options, like kind of a continued ad. It's definitely a higher intent if they're going to continue through that ad on that middle page and then move into the order value or the order itself. Have you seen higher AOVs on that kind of funnel, or are you really seeing, like, what are you seeing, I guess, in that style versus what you traditionally do with Meta?
It varies, and it all comes down to testing. So like there's so many different ways that, things that could be tested. So that's just like one way, right? In terms of like how do we approach it? Do we want to go with the super aggressive VSL with an interstitial page? Do we want to tone it down a little bit? Maybe go for like a hybrid type of page, something like where you have some text, you have a shorter video, and then, in terms of your offering, we've seen a lot like, the 136, that traditional offer, which has been around ever since Web 2.0, right? And people started buying things online. But right now we're seeing, a 1, 2, 3 type of offer can also be very successful. And it's about getting that first offer. It's about buying, they're buying a product and you're buying your customers' trust, right? So you have to earn that. And by selling them bottles of whatever it is, right? And then you're going to try to upsell them at more stuff, right? And they're going to get this massive shipment to their door without even trying it first. It could be a recipe for disaster. Forget about, that they're never going to buy again. You could also get refunds and stuff like that. So sometimes it's better to, under promise and over deliver.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's across the board, whether it's like a service or you're, delivering product and whatever it is, it's under promise and over deliver is always really helpful. So that's interesting. I guess in terms of, okay, so I want to backtrack a little bit here because I know I kind of went deep into some questions on the ad working now, but in terms of like what you've seen, I mean, you've been around for 20 years in this space doing this. Like, what have you seen change over that time that's like incredibly effective or ineffective these last 6 months that has really changed for you and your perspective on the marketing?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard to sum up 20 years of experience in this, but let me think. I would say like funnels and just the upsell funnel process has gotten more. I think people have realized that that's like really where you can maximize your day one value. So it's not selling them something super expensive on the front end. So meaning that like when someone comes to a landing page, right, and they see a product, so your day one value, average order value could be $200, right? And definitely if you're selling something online in the direct response space on Meta or Google, you should definitely be aiming for something where the day one value is maybe not $200, but $150 if you really want to make a run at it and be profitable. But what you need to realize is that sometimes when you go to that page, they're selling something for like $29 or $50, right? So where's that day one value coming from? So that's coming from after they purchase, there's going to be upsells and there's going to be multiple upsells. And the logic now that people are doing behind it, right, makes total sense and is optimized. That's the CRO, the conversion rate optimization that I was talking about earlier. It's that to figure out like, okay, so they bought this product, right? Let's try to sell them a little bit more of that product, see if they'll buy. But perhaps it might be better to cross market and sell them a different product. Either way, it's that idea to maximize that day one value, because before they put their wallet back into their pocket, so to speak, right, and that wallet is open, it's going to be much easier to get them to buy more, especially after they opened it up and they bought. But if you're going to sell something for $200, right, especially in the direct response space, I'm not talking about like biz ops and stuff like that, where offers can be, $400, $500, even $1,000, $2,000. I'm talking about more of like, in the supplement space, health and wellness space, where products tend to be a little bit more cost effective. You need to get them in, but then you need to figure out what happens after they buy. And beyond that, there's also like phone sales and stuff. There's some excellent companies in the space which who are doing like phone sales, where they'll call up your new buyers, welcome them to the club, and then tell them, hey, we have your box open, we're putting the stuff in, you don't need to pay for shipping. Is there anything else you want? And then, and depending how good they are, they can make recommendations and stuff like that. So it's not just they're selling people, without understanding their needs. They could understand their needs, and then they can make suggestions to them.
Gotcha. Okay, kind of like that health coach approach to be able to add on to the order, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. What kind of or what companies do you typically use for that? Do you have any names that you're willing to share? I know I can think of one.
For like phone sales and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, that you add on.
There are a bunch. There's some good ones. I'll give a shout out to Aria over at Salesbound, to Jeannie at HelpGrid. There are definitely some good ones in the space, and there are probably more that I don't even know about.
Yeah, those are the two that I hear, really great things about as well. So yeah, that's helpful to just kind of boost what you're already working on, and you're already getting them more product up front. Have you found that, like I watched something recently about subscription models and just people being overwhelmed with subscription models in general. And it sounds like the approach you're taking is less of trying to push people towards a subscription as much as it's the buy in bulk in advance. Is that right, or have you seen subscription models working for you too?
Well, that was part of it. Like with that one, two, three, switching over to like a smaller cell, right? To get them on a subscription. I think I forgot that part, where it's
Gotcha.
like you don't just do like one, two, three, but you actually have an option for a subscription, so you can get them in, and that kind of just hypes them up, so they're very excited to buy it at that point, but they're not committed to buying it. So they could always cancel it. They could try it out. And I always say, like, if you should stand behind your product, right? If you can't bet on your product, who can? So, it's something where it's like, if you need to rely on selling 6, 12, 20, I don't know how many bottles of a supplement, right? And you're afraid to say, you know what? Take this bottle and take it, see if you like it, see if it helps you with, whatever it is that it's supposed to help you for. And, you, if you can't do that, then, then, you know, the buyers shouldn't believe in it either.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and I sometimes wonder if that has to do with how things have been going for some places. Not everybody, but I know a lot of people. Some people are having a harder time. I think it's a lot of the adjusting, but also like making sure you can stand behind your product, and of course the market's
Yeah.
shifting. There's a lot more trust involved, LTV, all of that, right?
Yeah, and it's definitely with Amazon. You have to be on Amazon because customers are savvy. They understand, internet scams and risks and stuff of buying on the internet. And a lot of people are just feel, frankly, more comfortable buying on Amazon. So they could see your landing page, right? They could see your ad, and they could learn all about your product. But then they're like, let me go over to Amazon and see what else is there. And so if you're not there, right, that's going to be a problem. So you need to be on Amazon as well, and you just need to cover a lot more bases than you may have, let's say, 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and especially bringing up Amazon there because it's also the trust factor. People are looking at the reviews and what other people on Amazon are saying about it.
Yep, you
Do
can't
you
fudge those.
You cannot. They will notice. I go to the 5, the 3, and the 1. I want to see what everybody's saying.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. I usually like to go like to the twos and the fours because you have the people that are just they just like everything, and then you have the complainers. So that's like what is it, the net and then net approval score, right? What there's that system where they basically take out the 1 and the 10 in that case. So in Amazon, like, yeah, so I'm not crazy about the ones and the fives because I know they're a little bit tilted. But those two reviews, those 2-star reviews, you'll learn some negative things like in an honest way.
You really do, and I think there's also like you'll start to see like trends of like somebody saying like the same thing over and over, or like multiple people saying the same thing, and that's when you can go look it up and you find Reddit, and it's just a rabbit hole. But I feel like people are doing a lot more research like that on products nowadays, and I think it's important that they do, and it's also important, like you said, to be on multiple sources for people to buy, like Amazon. So are you guys running ads on Amazon, or how are you tracking from your ads to Amazon purchases?
We do not, but a lot of the stuff is, it's a lot of it comes in waves. So you need that whole pattern of everything working together. You turn off Google ads, and all of a sudden people see Facebook ads, and so there's that synergy between them. So it's definitely important to have them all.
Yeah, it's a lot of touch points people need to buy now. Do you remember what it is? I feel it's like 15 or something. I think it might have even gone higher
15.
last I heard. Is it 15?
There are some interesting studies about that, but then there's also Daniel Kahneman. He wrote Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow, and his book was basically where your mind makes a decision like right away. You'll decide to buy it, but then your mind will actually kind of like play tricks on you, and do I really want it? Is this really the best? And so it's like, because you don't want to make like a decision. So that was basically the thesis of his book, like where you don't want to make a decision right away because that will be like, oh, I'm brash, and I don't really think about things too much. But our mind is funny, and it just like kind of just like will sometimes trick us into thinking that we're making the right decision by rationalizing it and stuff like that. So I guess there's studies on both sides of the equation.
Interesting. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense though. It makes a lot of sense though. There's also, yeah, just different ways people process it. Okay. So, question, what are 5 to 7 of the problems that you see nearly every brand that you're working with has? Maybe just give us 3 to 5. You don't have to give us that many.
Well, yeah, the number one, and this is the all-encompassing answer, and let's see where we get to with this because there's a lot to unpack here. It might sound simple, but I think it's really deep, and that is that the number one problem that brands face is that they're living and breathing their product 24/7. Okay. And by that, I mean that, if I'm selling, whatever it is, right? I'm selling a certain product, right? I'm selling, let's say, a soft drink or something. All I'm thinking about, it doesn't make a difference. Like, I shouldn't be, let's say coffee, for example, right? Coffee's a great drink. I love it, but I'm not drinking it at let's say 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, right? Unless I'm going on a drive. But for the most part, like coffee for me is something that I think about in the morning, and that's it, right? But if your brand is coffee, right? And we actually had someone on my podcast, Dr. Charles Livingston, who runs Life Boost Coffee. He's thinking about coffee 24/7, right? Even when we're not thinking about coffee. And the idea is that we could get so caught up in the life cycle of like the product and the customer flow and stuff that we kind of think like, are we messaging too much or are we messaging not enough, right? So we might think like, no, we keep messaging them, right? But then, we need to take a step back and figure out, wait a second, right? Our customers aren't in our shoes, right? They're not living and breathing the product 24/7 the same way we are. They have a life, right? So that email that I sent yesterday, right? And they saw that email, right? Or that phone call that our customer support called them the other day, right? They're going to see that as one touch point. But then think about how many other touch points they have for the next, not even 24 hours, the next 3 hours, the next hour, right? And the next hour, they've probably thought about, I don't know, we could bring on some organizational psychologists to help us calculate what the answer is, but they've probably thought about 100 other different things, right? And they probably forgot about you. So I think that's like the most important thing, is to think more like the customer and less, am I messaging too much? So that's number one, right? And other issues that brands are probably making a mistake is that everyone lives like in an instantaneous world right now, especially even with AI, right? I want an answer to something. I want to know like which conferences to go to. I want to know like what I should be posting about on LinkedIn, right? I don't, it makes it so much easy with AI, right? That I could just write my problems to AI and in 2 seconds get an answer back. So that's also an issue that we're seeing from brands, especially young and less, for lack of a better word, less mature brands, that they want to see results now. They don't realize that paid advertising still takes time, it takes money, it takes testing, it takes data, right? You're not going to get results necessarily on day one, right? If you're not ready to invest in it, then it's going to be hard to scale. So you need to have patience and you need to understand that going in. And let's think about a third issue that brands, I think brands also, and this kind of like dovetails on the first answer, is the creative, that people aren't pushing the envelope enough. I always say, like, when it comes to creative design and process and ads and stuff, you always want to go to that red line, right? You don't want to go over it, but we definitely want to go towards the red line, push the envelope, and really, really be a little edgy if we can with our marketing. Not in a crass way, but in a way that's going to get people and eyeballs on our ads and to think about us and to make purchases.
Yeah, I like that, and that makes a lot of sense. Especially, I mean, all of it, of course. You get so in your head about like what your own product, and you're living it day in and day out, and you get so scared. Oh, they're gonna hate me if I message them one more time, or I do this one more thing, and
Yeah.
that's not what they're thinking about. They probably haven't even seen your message.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like that, like, it's like that scene in the movie, like where the person comes up to someone else and they're like, were you thinking about, did you think about what I said? And you're like, who are you? You know?
That's exactly it. Like I have no idea what you're even. Yeah, I mean we're just like flooded with information right now. It's hard not to be in that state. But what is the red line of ads? Like how many are you running? Like how many are you testing at a time? Like what's that red line mean to you?
Yeah, so we've made it really simple at Built to Scale. We've built actually an internal tool that we're actually using where we have a creative velocity feeder where we're able to basically, based on budget, and this is actually another, going back to your last question, one of the biggest problems that brands are facing when they're advertising is that they don't understand like how much ads and how much money they need to get statistically relevant information. So sometimes they'll kill an ad before it has enough time to spend, right? And then at other times, there's, we'll be doing an audit and their budget will be, let's say, $100, but they'll have, let's say, 10 ads in that budget. And that's not really going to be a recipe for success. So you need to have that like happy medium where you're giving enough ad budget to an ad, right? To kind of spend, and we break it down by concepts and stuff. So like, we usually like go with the 3-3 type of method, but we'll have, for each concept, we'll like 3 different hooks in it and test that out. And then basically come up with like theories of how things are. But we have a tool that, that we can use, which basically tells us where we're up to in the creative velocity, how much we need, how many creatives, how many concepts we need to be putting out based on where you're at, not like where someone else is at, right? No one cares what Nike's at. No one cares where Coca-Cola's at in terms of their digital advertising because we're not there, right? And it's not us. It's like running a marathon, right? If you're looking at, the gold medalist from the Olympics, right? That's a bad person to look at. Most of us are going to quit before we even, run that first kilometer or first mile of the marathon. And yeah, definitely, because the truth of the matter is when you translate what a gold medalist marathon mile is, their standard mile, most people can't even run 1 mile at that pace, right? The pace is mind boggling. So, and then you multiply that by, the whole marathon, like 26 miles. It's almost inconceivable. So you really have to be going up against yourself and trying to set your own PRs, your own personal records.
Yeah, and like you said, always be testing. But that's interesting. I like that. I like that comparison there, because you're not gonna just come out the gate and be have that Olympic level run or that Olympic level ad spend. You're not gonna be immediately spending thousands of dollars a day or hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, or whatever. Where would you say like people should start considering working with a company like you guys? Like when they're kind of spending around what budget?
Yeah, so that definitely passed the takeoff zone, right? So definitely like over 30,000 a month, and then we can help them scale to six digits a month and beyond. But it's all about like, yeah, it's all about also just having the patience to do it. But again, like we're not talking about patience of raising a child into adulthood. We're talking about 90 days.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. And are you guys also advising them on landing pages and back end offers and all that kind of stuff too to help them optimize? I imagine.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, the way we work, we actually have like plans with our clients or partners. I like to call them partners because we do partner with them, and we kind of have incentives baked in, so we don't like to just take landing pages and then just run with them. We like to go through it. We like to understand who the ICP is, go through the landing page, go through the purchase funnel, and understand where things are. And we'll advise. We'll definitely make suggestions and create our own landing pages for our clients.
I have a question that's kind of off the wall, and you don't have to give too many details if you don't want to, but I'd love to know what is the craziest thing you've seen on a landing page or ad that you're just like, what the biscuits is going on here?
So there's some like really like in terms of landing pages. There's a lot going on. I mean, I've seen a lot in terms of. Are you asking like in terms of, let's say, like the way it's set up, like the storyline for the VSL? Are you talking about like?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, any of it. I'm just curious if there's like a moment that surprised you, like, wow, that actually worked, but it worked really well and you didn't expect it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't take credit for it, but the Dollar Shave Club has that ad where where the CEO's in the warehouse and stuff, and he goes through it, and it's so brilliant and stuff. And I think basically like a lot of origin stories, right? Because essentially it's the origin story. It's done in I mean, this was done, let's say, 15, 20 years ago, but it was done in a very comical way, but a very genuine and sincere way. So I think like a lot of like origin stories, right? People always want to know where Superman came from. So when you talk about the founder, right? So many times, and definitely in the health and wellness space, the founders of these companies actually had the issue. And it's so powerful when they open up and they actually talk about their issues and how they overcame it and how they came to found their company. And sometimes you think like, wow, that's not really going to fly. Like, who cares, that this person had this problem or that problem and they made a company. Great. Like, and then just, you go to conferences where you're meeting like these offer owners and the brand owners, and they're building small to medium business companies, and you hear their stories, and all of a sudden you realize, wait a second, there's something genuine here. People like to connect with authenticity.
I like that. Yeah. They really do. That's what gets us to buy, and especially now when we're in like, it's a trust recession or trust market where people want to buy from people they trust, they believe in, and they want to know the story behind it because it's almost like you're buying from alignment in values as well as alignment in what the company stands for. It's just the same as with building a team is that alignment to the vision, the mission, and the values that they hold. I think are incredibly important, and a lot of people miss that. Do you see that often in the
Absolutely.
space?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I was going to say, like, I know that you definitely see that. We spoke about that. We've had some interesting conversations about how being mission aligned is really, really important. It's really just believing, right? You know, I grew up as a Mets fan, and yes, I'm still a Mets fan. And the saying is, you got to believe, right? Even if it's August and they're in last place, I kind of give up. But like every April comes around, the beginning of the season, I'm like, you got to believe this is going to be our year, right? So yeah, one of these years, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. It's like you got to believe and people want to believe in the product they're buying and the mission behind it and the story behind it. Like you said, it really a lot of the buying decision comes down to that story, or at least like
Yeah.
the loyalty to the brand, right?
Yeah, definitely. And also with AI and everything and how the landscape is changing so much with it, right? People have so much more information at their fingertips now. So if you're not going to be real and you're not going to have a good product, people are going to find out about it, and it's going to be really hard to scale something like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What has been one of the hardest brands or products for you to scale in the past? Well, let me ask this. Hardest and one you've been most excited for.
So we've scaled like something in the pet space, which is exciting. I have a pet, so something that I could relate to. So that was fun. Yeah, and then we've also done stuff in the supplement space as well. It's hard for me to actually go into like details of things with keeping things without giving too much away. But we definitely have had a lot of fun, coming up with ads and stuff, and also that whole creative process. Like I said, at the beginning of this episode, like where I see myself as like being creative, and when those creative juices get flowing and stuff, I'm really excited. And even with AI and stuff, like you still need to hold its hands, and you can't just let it turn the ignition on and let it drive, right. You need to hold the steering wheel. So but even like when it comes to advertising and video ads, so that's something that's also very exciting to make those almost like mini movies and stuff, where you just have it's telling a story in a very, very quick, short time frame.
Yeah. Yeah, that really is. That makes a lot of sense. I think people just want to hear that story, and we are having to shorten it a bit. People are, or at least some people are having less luck with the longer VSLs and things like that. So, how would you recommend that they approach something like that, but still hold true to their story?
Yeah, for sure. Well, with everything in AI and the changing landscape, it's all about learning new things and stuff. And I like to consider myself a little bit of a history buff, American history buff. And I had this thing where we're reading biographies of the early American presidents, and there was one president which I didn't get to his biography, John Quincy Adams. And then recently I found myself a copy of a good biography of his. And the reason is, he's one of the lesser known early US presidents. And he famously lost the election of 1824, but still won the presidency. He actually got like only 30% of the votes. It's pretty fascinating. But long story short, he becomes president, and he shouldn't have been, become president. As they say, he won. He lost fair and square, but he won at the end of the day. And then 4 years later, he gets trounced. Okay, Andrew Jackson comes to the presidency. He's a well liked president and a little bit more famous. And instead of going home back to Quincy, Massachusetts, John Quincy Adams actually gets elected to Congress. He's the only president to go into Congress after his presidency. And because of that, because like the Andrew Jackson and his party feared that he would come into Congress and he would, kind of wreak havoc and stuff as the former president, right? They decided to stick him like on these committees and stuff that were had very little relevance at the time. Okay. And John Quincy Adams, the former president, he was ambassador for several countries in Europe, right? And who was like the man of diplomacy, right? He's now sitting like on these committees of like manufacturing and stuff, right? I don't even know if there is a committee for manufacturing anymore, or where that would fall, like in terms of government. But instead of like being upset about it, he actually goes and learns everything there is to learn about it. And he read and he wrote a lot. His autobiography spanned almost his whole life, 14,000 pages. And so can you imagine just like what the man read? So and he just kept learning. And that's really the main message here is just keep learning and keep testing and understand exactly who your audience is and how to sell to them, keep selling to them and keep reinventing yourself. Because, if you don't, some other company that doesn't even exist today is probably going to come out in another couple of weeks or months or in 2027 and just blow you out of the water.
Makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And the speed that we are going with AI and all the changes, like, yeah, that you just
Yes.
have to keep on top of it if you're not learning. I love that metaphor and that explanation.
Yeah. 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 And sometimes it's daunting and stuff, but I think really just, just being open to it and not saying, I did this for X amount of years. Right. And, that's how I did it and I can't go on. No, you can. Right. And you can be very, very successful with it and learn and really augment your career and take it to the next level. It doesn't have to be a door stopper.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And it's really just always like reinventing the next version, the next level, whether that's of yourself and your personal growth, your company, your product, the way you market it. It's that growth mindset and that growth focus of just continuing to pivot and make
Yep.
the adjustments we need.
Yeah, opening doors, right? It's all about opening doors, right? If you try something, right? If you try one LLM today and you don't like it, try another one tomorrow. And they're updating all the time anyway. So try it again in another month.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then maybe a few months from there, your favorite one's gonna go down, and you got to try a new one. So but
Yep.
keeping it moving and keeping pivoting, I think, is the core to that, and focusing on your growth.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. And if you ever watch, the NBA from the 1980s, like, to pivot and take like one step, that was considered a travel, right? Now players, there's a little more freedom and liberty in terms of what a travel is. Sometimes you'll see a player walk up half the court without dribbling the ball. So it's the same thing in our lives as well with AI. There's a lot more liberty in terms of like what you can be doing, with AI and exploring and testing new things. And really, there are no doors, in 2026 that are really closed in the digital marketing space.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love, it's exciting to see how much we can do and how quickly. If you have an idea or something you want to test or try out, you can have it turned around so quickly and be trying that out and seeing if it works. It's like a new opportunity for just incredible growth. And I feel like you guys probably help a lot of clients with that.
Yeah, for sure. And getting rid of that fear of failure, right? We all fail. We all make mistakes. But we have to realize where we're at. When I was in the online gaming space, like a long time ago, we were doing print advertising, and I know print advertising is coming back, and there's definitely a space for it. But when it came to print advertising, we were so careful and so meticulous never to make a mistake because to print something, that's it, it's printed and it's out there, right? But if you have a landing page, right, and you have a typo, right, or whatever, the style's off, these things could always be fixed, right? Like, let's not go crazy here. Let's not be afraid to test new things. Let's not be, you know, uh, redirect your landing page, right? If it's not working, right? Come up with a new one, right? Test a new one and just again, continuous growth.
Too is not getting caught up in those little, this is wrong, this is wrong. It's not absolutely perfect. It's like kind of that imperfect action of being able to test what's actually working and be able to quickly and be able to pivot based on that, right?
For sure. For sure. Yeah, definitely. You just want to keep moving and keep testing. And if it doesn't work, all right, we tried that. What's the next thing that we could try? And it's that continuous, improve. Let's say, if we can improve 1%, right? If you could improve, I forget where it actually crosses, but if you could improve, let's say 100% in one day or 1% every day, right? At a certain point, you're going to have an exponentially higher growth by that little incremental 1% growth every day, as opposed to just taking 100% growth today and just, you know, retiring or quitting or whatever, stopping any growth.
Yeah, it's that compounding interest of your growth. I like that. I like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
What, speaking of testing, I have one more question for you. I know that we've gotten some amazing insights from you today, and I'm really excited to share more. Guys, if you want
Thank
more
you.
from Shmuel, check out Built to Scale. Honestly, this has been awesome. I have a question though. I'm dying to know. And you're gonna think it's weird, but it is what it is. Get as weird as we can on this podcast, all right?
Okay, let's do it.
What is, without like saying the company's name or client's name or anything like that, what is a headline or like, yeah, like a headline that you were testing that won and you were like, there's no way that's winning. That is awful, but it won.
Wait. Is that the internet? Cutting out. I didn't hear you.
Sorry. No, okay, how
Yeah,
about
yeah. No, no. I got you.
oh, the
I
hook.
heard.
You were
Yeah. Definitely like that. Something that like that we thought wouldn't really. It's those like silly things that people do, right? You know, if I could start an ad, right, and all of a sudden, like I drink a little bit of water first, hold on, and you hear that swallow, right? That like all of a sudden is a pattern interruption. So sometimes these pattern interruptions are just so like really, you know. But that's what hooks people in. That's why it's called a hook, right? We don't call it a hook for because it just sounds like a good word. We're actually literally from fishing, hooking them in. So it's those kind of like funny little like goofy types of movements or a the way it's shot as well, like the angle that you could shoot from, the sound, all that kind of stuff. So those are kind of like the things where I would say like where I don't have like anyone in particular, but those I've seen like a lot of them where it's just like really, but they could actually move the needle.
and that makes so much sense. Like I see a lot of people who like sometimes they get so stuck on like it has to be branded, it has to be perfect, it has to be this, that has to be that. But it's actually those pattern interrupts that you're looking for that actually captures the attention and gets people to pay attention.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, brand marketing and performance marketing are two sides of the same coin. It's the same coin, right? It's the same company and stuff, but those sides of the coin never really see each other, right? So
Yeah.
they look totally different, right? So and that's also it's up to the brand to figure out how much they want to drift away from their brand marketing in terms of their performance marketing and their paid advertising and how they want to build their funnel out to get people in. So at a certain point, you definitely want it on brand because they're actually buying a product. But that first video, right? We're seeing like a lot of like POV types of videos do really well. Those don't necessarily need to be shot, horizontally, like and in kind of like a high produced video. Those can be very very with an iPhone shot vertically, someone with shaking hands and stuff, and gives that authentic touch. And that could be really, really far from what the brand is.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, and I like that distinction of the brand versus the performance. Would you say like maybe brand is a little bit more, your base and your LTV focus, where performance is a lot more like kind of acquisition, getting people to you to recognize it?
Yeah, performance, I would say, and the paid advertising has to do with that acquisition marketing, that first sale, and it's not, I'm not saying, that you should only introduce what your brand looks like 5 months down the road, right? No, you should definitely show them. But what I'm saying is that like in an ad, right? If you're doing, let's say, testimonial type of videos, right? They could be natural. They could have someone speak, a customer, right? And they're not part of your brand, right? So it doesn't need to be produced and shot like you have your own studio per se.
I think that actually captures more people because they're like, oh, this is authentic and real, without the studio, especially on
Yeah,
ads.
yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Well, I really appreciate this, Shmuel. This has been amazing. Tell us, where can people find you? Built to Scale podcast, and how else?
Yeah, for sure. The best way is built to scale. So our website's built to scale.co. You can get in touch with us there. We have, we're on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn personally, and Built to Scale is on LinkedIn as well. And we'll I'll make sure I get you all those links, and can we get them in the show notes?
Yeah, of course. We're going to put all of it in the show notes. I've already
Awesome.
got the Built to Scale Co. And we're going to also make sure your podcast is in there. Because, guys, he has been putting out some really incredible content on there. I'm not just like, there have been really, really great people that he has been interviewing. He's putting a lot of amazing effort into it. So definitely go check out his podcast as well.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's really really nice of you.
Yeah,
And this
I
was a
really
lot of
enjoy it.
fun.
It is a lot of fun to get to interview people and also see that see their expertise and their excitement and their genius zone come out of them. So
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, even before we got on, I was thinking like, wow, you know, I've spoken at a couple of events this year. I'm going to be speaking at another one later on in the year, and I've done, a lot of podcasts. I started my podcast only this year, so we've recorded at this point almost around 25 episodes, and I realized, wow, I've been asking a lot of questions. I've just been talking from the pulpit, so to speak, but to be in the hot seat, it's different, but it was a lot of fun. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
thank you so much for answering all my crazy questions and for being here with us today. It's been really fun to get to interview you and just get to know your work more. So guys, make sure to check out Built to Scale. We'll have everything linked in the comments for you. And thank you so much for being here. This has been really awesome. I appreciate it.